doing that and getting closer to the policy making. The policymakers has to benefit from the thinking capacity of the Institute and to link all over the world with other thinkers in order to provide us with the thing that we need more, which is analysis. And this annual conference is a key moment when the European strategic community comes together in order to think about the main security issues and the threats that we are facing. And it's a chance, for me at least, to lift my eyes from the everyday crisis, from crisis management mode, to escape from the tyranny of the present, and to have the possibility of looking a little bit ahead. As I said, we have been living dramatic events in Russia those days, but there's also the war in Ukraine, the Serbia-Kosovo, the Sahel. We think about our China strategy, the summit with Latin Americans, of course our defense agency agenda in general. Happy to see you here. The work on ammunition, development of the industrial capacity for defense, launching new missions. I will go to Niger next week in order to launch our new mission in the Sahel. Well, a lot of things that prevent you sometimes from stopping and thinking. So it's a good moment for me to share with you. And I would like to go about three things. First, how do we see the forces shaping our world? If you want to have a guide for action, you have to understand how things are going and what is coming. Which are the forces that are shaping our world? And here, if you want a headline summary, it's easy. We live in a power political world. Power politics is back and is shaping the world. It's not the world that we Europeans would like, but it is the way it is. Second thing, we have to have a broad approach to the word security. Security is becoming multidimensional. It's not security in front of a military threat. It's not just about defense in the classical term of the world. It's a very complex dimension. And the headline summary of my words is, we have to rethink what security means. And it means a lot of different things. Then I want to use the concept of economic security to illustrate all this. You have seen that we, together with the Commission, the High Rep, together with the Commission, has presented a communication that the European Union Council, the European Council, will discuss this week. And the summary of the headline of my words is, we have to avoid risky dependencies, too risky dependencies, the so-called de-risking, but de-risking comes with risks. And we have to look for the adequate balance, how to protect our interest, but take into account also how this will affect our relationship with key partners. Economic security is about security. And remember that the High Rep is High Rep for foreign and security policy. The part security, which was a little bit on the corner, the margins, now becomes more and more important. So let's have a look at the new global landscape. Certainly, what do we see? It's raising bipolarity, US-China, but underlying this bipolarity, there is a messy multipolarity. There is not just two poles, there are many other poles, and these poles interact between them, hedging one side or the other. It's like a constellation. two big poles, and then someone turning around, and sometimes changing the orbit and going to another orbit and turning around another pole. And this is what geopolitical competition is. And this geopolitical competition is weakening multilateralism like never before. The US-China bipolar competition is becoming more and more confrontational, and is spreading about all areas: security, technology, ideology, information. And we see there is a growing assertiveness, as I said, a hedging behavior by emerging countries who, in a certain moment, for certain reasons, they are in one orbit, and then in another moment, for other reasons, they are in the other orbit. We can call it not the non-aligned countries, but the disaligned countries. And the image of the constellation about two poles and some satellites changing from one constellation to another shows well what's happening. At the beginning of my mandate, I talked about the battle of narratives. Then came the pandemic. And now the battle is no longer about narrative, it's about offers. Who offers more? And in security terms, what we see is the old and new wars. The old wars, the brutal wars, 1914 style, tranches and mass destruction and mass killing, high-intensity conventional war are in our doorsteps. And armed races is worldwide. You have a look at the increase of armed expenditure in the world, it's really impressive. We Europeans, we are also part of this because we are increasing our military expenditure. But I am coming from the Southeast Asia, and the Southeast Asia arms race is much bigger than us. The countries in Southeast Asia, as an example, are spending much more on defense, on military capabilities, and when this happens, it is because people feel insecure. So the old wars are coming back, and then there is the new wars, the rise on hybrid wars, and the weaponization of everything. Everything is becoming an arm. And if we have a look at our environment, we see that we are surrounded by conflicts and insecurity. From the Sahel, Horn of Africa, look what's happening in Sudan, the Middle East, the Caucasus, the Western Balkans, apart certainly from Ukraine and Moldova. And in economic terms, we see a new paradigm coming up. Yes, until now the primacy was about open markets and just in time. Buy just in time. Doesn't matter where. And now instead of just in time, we are talking about just in case. Your behavior is not to save the last euro by having a flow of supplies that comes from who knows where. Now it's just in case. Be precautious. Take care, because these supply lines can be cut, or these supply lines can fail. I remember during the pandemic, suddenly, where is the paracetamol? Oh, we don't produce a single gram of paracetamol in Europe. Well, it doesn't matter, the market will provide. Well, the market will provide or not, it depends. If everybody is asking for the same product at the same time, then the market cannot provide to everyone. And me first was the answer. And me first means we second. And it means that an excessive dependency on something as inoffensive, like a medicine, basic medicine product, can become a risk. And today, yes, we get rid of the Russia dependency on hydrocarbons, on gas, but we have increased our dependency on critical materials and critical products needed for the digital transformation from China. So don't change one dependency by another. Then comes the word technology. Technology will be the key of the strategic competition. for the technological supremacy. The US started a technological war with China, willing to hamper the technological development of China, and technology has become a tool and an arena, a place where people fight and a tool for fight. So this is the way I see how the world is turning. And I have two main conclusions. We believe in a competitive world of giants where you need size, you need scale to survive, and thanks God we have the European Union that provides us with a scale and size, because each one of us, each member state, is certainly too small to survive in this world of giants competing among them. And we have to have the ambition of becoming a pole, multipolarity. Europe has to have the ambition of being a pole and having the capacity to act as one. And the second conclusion is that we have to look at the whole board. Everything is connected. And security, as I said, becomes a multidimensional word. We have to look at each one of the dimensions of the security. And this brings me to the second part of my remarks on how we need to face this security prism. Let me give some examples. Let me go to some examples on how we have to look at this prism of integrated security approach. Yes, we talk about the green transition. We talk about the digital transition. We should talk about the security transition. It is the third transition for the European Union. From looking at the world with the eyes of trade and the rule of law, looking at the world with the eyes of security. And on doing that, we have a certain advantage. We have a certain advantage because as an international player, we can cover the full spectrum of threats with a full spectrum of tools. We have almost everything. We have the diplomatic, the civilian capacity, the military capacity for managing crisis. We have the financial capacity. We could use restrictive measures, and we do, and we have done, in front of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We have a strong regulatory power. We have a lot of tools. Certainly, we continue using them in silos. We have to integrate more our capacities, and we have to take decisions quicker. I know that we need unanimity, and sometimes unanimity makes us to work too slow. And also there is a certain tendency of using other policies in order to circumvent unanimity. And we present some policies as trade policies because trade doesn't require unanimity. It's enough with a qualified. We do foreign and security policy 2 months, we have liberated ourselves from the extraordinary dependency on Russian gas that we had been building for decades, building pipelines and having long-term contracts. And at the end, 40% of the gas was coming from Russia. Highly risky dependency. And we decided to get rid of it. I think a lot of people thought that it was impossible to do it, but we have done it. And now we are almost free of this dependency. And the revenues of Russia from this, the export of these energy resources are half of what they got in 2022. Yes, you can tell me in 2022 they were very high because of high prices. Look at it another way. It has go below the level of 2021. And Russia has not got another client for its gas. For oil, yes, but not for gas. China is too far away. And now they are burning the gas that they cannot sell to anyone else. But for us, we have destroyed an important dependency. And we have enhanced our strategic position. And we don't have to think about, when we talk about Russia, oh yes, but what about our energy dependency? Has gone. And this is a good thing, a good example. The Russia energy leverage has gone for good. Don't build another one with someone else. Another example is foreign interference and manipulation of information. This is, I see people here working a lot on that, and I want to thank them for this work. This is another dimension of security. It's not just a matter of conquering land. It's conquering mind. It's not occupying territory. It's mastering the brains of the people by providing them information that presents the world in a certain manner. And this jeopardizes the security of our democracies. It links the external and internal dimension of security. When I talk with some of my colleagues on the Commission, commissioners who are in charge of internal issues, because they don't have competences on foreign policy, and I am in charge of the external dimension of the same issue, where external dimension starts, which is the border between internal and external. There is not. There is not, but certainly there are internal agents and external agents. And we need to have a networked approach, not only with member states of the European Union, but also with international partners, with civil society, with the main and most important private actors. And we have done a lot, and I want to use this opportunity to explain what we have done. A few years ago, it was nothing. And now we have built a task force, the External Action Service, with this European Union versus disinformation, the good exhibit that I've seen today in the External Action Service corridors. And through this work, we have been having a lot of access, a lot of people having access to our information. More than 20 million people have been using our social media channels, including from Russia. And we have been exposing more than 15,000 cases of clear evidence of disinformation campaigns and the growing cooperation by external actors interfering in our political processes. And this is, I repeat, one of the most important security concerns for our democracies. And it is an asymmetric battle because our adversaries are very well resourced and lies spread quicker than truth. And they have the capacity, much more capacity. There are farm trolls working 24 hours a day, sending messages, and it's not a marathon that can be won in one day. It's a long, resilient building. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. We have to be much more resilient on that. And I think that we have to allocate more resources to this battle. Then we have, on the more classical security dimension, military security, we have the strategic compass, And we want this year to do the first live exercises of the European armies, to develop the Human Forum, to enhance our partnership, and to develop better our industrial capacity. It's utopical to believe that you can be autonomous in any dimension if you don't have the technology and industrial capacity to underline this autonomy. We have human rights sanctions around the world that, sometimes they are symbolic and sometimes they are quite effective. And last but not least, climate. We are working on a communication on climate security and defense. And the other day I was here with John Kerry, my colleague Timmermans, and a representative from the Pentagon discussing about the link between climate, security and defense. And certainly there is a lot of security implications of the climate crisis. And once again, we don't have enough resources, we don't allocate enough resources to the fight against the climate threat from the point of view of security. I don't want to go deeper on that, but everybody has in mind the images of the migrants abandoning their land because the land is no longer fertile, and they escape because their land has become unproductive due to the climate. But look at another image, less topical, the Arctic. If the Arctic is becoming a sea in which ships can go easily, then Alaska will be much closer to the coast of Russia, and you can go from the China's coast to the European coast much quicker. And this presents a completely different landscape for the movement of ships and for the position of military forces around the world. But I want to concentrate my last words on economic security, because we are working on that. And this week the European Council will study a communication done by the Commission and the High Representative. Economic security is about security. The substantive is security. The adjective is economic. Economic is the tool, security is the issue. And the starting point is to recognize that open markets, economic integration, and rules-based trade have been good for our prosperity and for the prosperity of the average inhabitant of the earth. This has helped hundreds of millions of people out of poverty worldwide, and it has pushed the emergency of today big powers that 50 years ago they were very, very poor countries. So for the humankind, I think the balance is positive. But now we are entering in a clear, different historical phase. La mondialisation heureuse, I think it's over. It happened, but now it's a different landscape. And the benefits of economic integration are being reevaluated through the lens of national security. As I said at the beginning, it's no longer just in time, it's just in case. Take care. It's about security, how firms and states are reevaluating the economic integration. Oh yes, I can integrate better and more with someone, but it puts my security at risk. This was no longer about cost, economic cost. It's about political risk. And in recent years, it's not from last week, it's not from the last crisis, since the beginning of this legislature, at the European Union, we have been taking measures to protect from security risk and excessive dependencies. We have done a lot of things. The 5G toolbox, the inward investment screening, measures from procurement, subsidies, anti-coercion instruments, And now we talk about the possibility of a outbound investment. If you add up, it's a lot. It's a lot, but mainly is not enough for the landscape in which we are living. And then it's why we talk a lot, and we will talk a lot about economic security. And I want to invite the foreign policy community to take a big stake on this, because it will shape our foreign relations. It will shape our security through economic tools, but I want to stress that it is about security, to protect our security through economic tools. And the foreign affairs policy, people have to feel engaged on that, because it's not about technology and economy, it's about security. We have to be aware that when we address a risk and we take measures in order to control this risk, we can harm our relations with third countries. Third countries which cooperation we continue having it, needed it. And keep in mind this sentence that an African minister told me the other day. Stop talking to me about values. Because yes, we share the same values. What we don't share is the same priorities. On facing the problems that you and us have, we have different priorities, because we live in different circumstances. So we have to be very much aware that when we take a measure to ensure us, we affect others. And we have to take into account how these policies affects our relations with third countries that we need. Be aware of the secondary effects. Be aware of the long-term consequences. We do not want a world of fragmentation. A world is split in two blocks, two different ecosystems, from the technological point of view or from the economic point of view. We have to look at everything we do, take into account how it does affect to the rest of the world. It's critical for our credibility and for our defense of multilateralism. We cannot defend multilateralism and then to take measures that goes against the basis of multilateralism. On the month to come, we will talk a lot about the risking, which is central to the debate. And certainly, who likes risk? Nobody likes risk, but you have to take risk in life. How big, how dangerous are these risks? This is the question. And once again, cutting our energy import from Russia and accelerating investment in renewables are good, but it automatically increases our exposure to other countries which control 80–90% of the refining and end products needed for the green transition. It will not be green transition without these materials. And who have these materials? Certainly not us. So we have to be aware that coming from one side to the other represents changing risk. And we have also to think when decoupling starts and when de-risking finishes. Because de-risking is also a way of decoupling. So de-risking and decoupling cannot be used as slogans. They are heavy words, full of content, that requires months or years of a stubborn and intense implementation in order to make them effective. And certainly where you stand makes you to have a different look at what we are talking about. We need a real debate in Europe about it, keeping in mind that the European institutions propose is their role, the Commission and their competences, and the High Representative on their competences, but at the end are the member states who decide. The European Union at the end is a club of states, and the states will have to take decisions on many of these proposals which will affect deeply and structurally many of our relations with the rest of the world and different ways on ensuring our security. It's not going to be an easy debate. It's going to be full of dilemmas. To protect our security, yes, but at the same time, allowing freedom to flourish. Security cannot be taken at the price of diminishing freedom. Fighting against disinformation, but safeguarding freedom of speech. Both things have to go together. De-risking, but remaining an open economy. Where is the balance point between these different issues will require a lot of work, a lot of analysis, a lot of support from the intellectual community to the decision-making people like me. So I thank you in advance for the work you will do and for the work you have been doing. That's why we are here. I invite to continue supplying knowledge for the people who have to take decisions. This is a collective exercise, and I think that no one else offers a better platform for this exercise than the Institute. Once again, thank you very much for your work, to you and to all the people who work on this Institute, and I wish you a long life full of intellectual successes. Thank you.